Wisconsin Eye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye coverage of the 2014 elections continues with an interview with Mr. Dan Kilkenny. He's a Democrat of Delavan. He's running in the 11th State Senate District. Dan, welcome to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
Programming note, Wisconsin Eye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. Dan, you currently serve on the Walworth County Board.
Yes, I'm a Walworth County Board Supervisor representing the city of Delavan, parts of the town of Derry, and some other parts.
And you're an attorney practicing?
I'm an attorney practicing law and have practiced in Delavan for a little over 30 years.
Okay. Can we start? I want to ask you about something on your website. You quote James Madison, warning against the tyranny of the majority. Do you feel that's what's happened in the Capitol the last few years, sir?
Well, we need to have balance. Checks and balances is what really James Madison talked about. And one of the problems with the current situation, which was also warned of by George Washington, don't necessarily want to get into history lessons, in his farewell address, is factions are a danger to our liberty and to their form of government. And so there was checks and balances. And so you have the three branches of government, two houses. And so that provides the checks and balances. But if all of those branches are controlled by one party, you don't have those checks and balances.
All the major changes in the last 4 years under Governor Walker's administration, with the help of the GOP leaders of the Senate and the Assembly, which of those changes most upset you, or you consider the worst public policy?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily the worst. Let me back up. I think one of the problems that we have is the partisan legislative redistricting, which was done by the 2010 legislature. Okay. So I suppose that would be the worst policy, because we have a legislative districts that have resulted this year in over half of the assembly districts not having a race in the fall. And so if we have more than half of the legislators aren't facing an election, who are they answering to but party, and I would assume the lobbyists or people that support them there. Okay. And so that is problematic and is very troublesome to me. So
do you support the Iowa model in which a nonpartisan panel draws the lines?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you look at an Iowa map, it makes sense. It follows municipalities, county lines. I think Senator Cullen said, look at all the right angles. And I sit on the town board, as you may know, or indicated, I'm not sure, Walworth County Board of Supervisors as well. And so we deal with local clerks. And when you have these districts that are gerrymandered, it makes their jobs more difficult, elections more expensive, and difficult for people to even tell who their representative is, or people in the same town voting for 2, 3 different candidates just doesn't make sense.
Okay, thank you. Let's go through some specific issues. One of the biggest funding questions is how much state aid to give public schools in the next budget cycle. What's your position on funding public schools? Do we need a new school aid formula?
I think we probably do need a new school aid formula. I think they're unintelligible. I've, as a county board member, talked to our local school board regarding impacts of, for example, tax incremental financing districts on school aid. They really can't tell. It's complicated and, again, unintelligible. The broader question is, are we going to continue to support public education in Wisconsin and make sure that we do that?
Okay. What's your position on school choice and vouchers? As you're aware, there's currently a enrollment cap of 1,000 outside the city of Milwaukee and Racine. What do you think should be the future of choice and vouchers?
Well, it's something you need to continue to look at, but I think what's happened is we're pitting private schools against public schools, and not, again, taking a global picture of how are we going to educate students in Wisconsin. And if we're taking from one to give to the other, there's real problems. And some districts get hit pretty hard. They have less students. Again, the state aid formula makes the district appear richer, and it perhaps is creating a downward spiral for our public schools. And we need to look at the big picture, not just tinker with this or that for political reasons. But in terms of the specific vouchers now, if those are in place, again, I wouldn't be doing anything radical to pull that from parents that have their children in situations in schools that are working for them.
Okay. So you would keep choice as an option with some type of a cap in the next biennial budget, statewide?
I wouldn't necessarily be looking at a cap. I think we need to have a conversation, and that's, again, why you have deliberative bodies, to look at what is actually happening. But again, I think we need to look at the bigger picture, what is happening to public schools in general, and are we adequately funding those?
5 or 6 weeks ago, as you know, Governor Walker called for the repeal of the Common Core educational standards. Do you have a position on that?
Yes, actually, I have a note here because I wanted to indicate a quote that I read just in preparation for this. Steve Kestel, Republican from Elkhart Lake. The idea that they'd just be able to replace the standards at the beginning of the legislative session is absurd. We're in an election season. People desperate to be elected will say anything. I guess that would be my position. Common Core is standards. It's not curriculum. I went to school in the early 60s after Sputnik, and we had new math. We're going to continually have different approaches as to how we're going to educate our students, and I think this issue has just become overly politicized and unnecessary. The important thing is that we have good teachers, we have students showing up for school every day, they're alert and well-nourished. That's what we need to focus on, and that the schools have the funds necessary to give the education that students deserve.
You would support the current Common Core standards?
I wouldn't repeal them. I would look at them. Again, it's an ongoing process. We're always trying to have this state be better, or at least that should be our goal. And if these standards are too low, too high, they're interfering with teachers' ability to teach, we'd need to look at all of those. So again, I don't take a political position. I guess you could take a poll and say X number of people don't like Common Core. I think it's greatly misunderstood. But again, the focus should be on what is our public education in Wisconsin going to be like? How do we get good teachers? How do we get kids showing up at school every day, alert and ready to learn?
Thank you. Let's talk about transportation funding. The Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance has said if we keep transportation funding at the 2013 level for 10 years, we have a $2 billion deficit. Do you think we have a deficit? And if so, how would you fix it?
Well, either we have a deficit or we don't. If that's the numbers that the Taxpayers Alliance is indicating, we probably do. If you have a deficit, you would need to fix it. You need to change projects. We certainly shouldn't have projects that aren't essential. I took a position in Walworth County. There's a proposal to widen Highway 50 to 4 lanes from Lake Geneva to Delavan. Currently, most people, if they're in a hurry, they take Highway 43 and then 12 down. I've timed it myself, and it's about 15 to 20 minutes going the other way, not much different. And I think that's going to be something like a $30 million program. It's not going to be 4 lanes all the way. Going through the city of Lake Geneva, it's going to be through the city streets. And so I look at a project like that, and I think something like that should be eliminated. We need to look at every project and only have what's essential. We also need to look at perhaps our transportation system's going to change. Driverless cars, recently heard they may be here in as soon as 6 years. That may change how much concrete, asphalt we need, how we transport. We need to look at that.
Would you consider raising either the gas tax or the $75 per car that you and I pay to register a vehicle?
Well, the gas tax, I think, is a reasonable design. It takes into account who's using the roads, how hard they are on the roads. If you have a light car, you get great gas mileage, you wouldn't be spending as much. A big rig on the road carrying products, you're pounding the road, but you can pass that on. You can't have a deficit. You need to fix it. And so if it needs funds, I think that the gas tax may be a fair way to do that. Unfortunately, you have a lot of Republicans who have signed this, what I call the no think pledge, but it's no tax increase pledge. I don't think we should tax any more than we have to, but to isolate every little tax and say, I won't raise that, even if it makes sense, is bad policy. So For example, in my county, we have a bridge, town of Sharon, went out. The people are worried about their emergency services, the disruption to their lives. When we looked into that, apparently there won't be any money available for 2 years. That's unacceptable. A basic function of government is roads and bridges. Okay. And you have to pay for it. You can't run around and say, I've signed a pledge with Grover Norquist that says, I'm not going to take care of you, I'm not going to do something that makes sense.
Let me ask a question about health care. The American Hospital Association has said Wisconsin has the second lowest Medicaid reimbursement rates. Have you studied the issue? Do you think those rates should be increased in the next budget, sir?
Well, to be honest, I haven't studied that particular issue, but I think we currently have a policy here that we have not accepted the Medicaid expansion money from the federal government. We send taxes to the federal government. We could be getting $200 million back, I guess, in this next couple of years. Over the course of the next few years, I've heard it's as much as $500 million. I don't think it's healthcare policy to have emergency room care and bankruptcy, and I can't believe that's helpful to the hospitals either. I mean, a person's financially ruined, the hospital doesn't get paid. I don't know how that helps us provide service or provide health care to our citizens.
So you would like to see us take that federal money and expand the MA benefit program?
Yes. I think when the issue first came up, there was question what would be the result. I think recent reports show we have 60 to 100,000 people not insured, and the people that are uninsured are not people not working. They're people at 100% to 138% of the poverty level, and those people need to be covered. If there's money available to help that, we should do it. I just watched an interview yesterday where somebody said, well, it's a trap because we might not have that money forever. Well, if we can get $500 million now to help our people, we should. If 5 years the federal government takes a U-turn on it, we still need to take care of those people. Again, bankruptcy and emergency rooms are not the answer.
There will be a bill introduced next session to legalize medical marijuana. Do you support that? And should Wisconsin consider the legalizing the recreational use?
I haven't seen the specific bill, but I would absolutely support medical marijuana. Just yesterday I read in the paper a mother in Minnesota had a son brain damaged, was in a Little League accident, line drive, hit him in the head, and she was recently arrested for giving her child cannabis oil, which was recommended to her by a physician. He would cry himself to sleep before this, horrible pain. She says it's miraculous. As a legislator, I don't know what it's my business to be telling doctors what to do, limiting pharmacologists the ability to study this, or to tell some mother that her child has to suffer. It should be in the hands of doctors, pharmacologists, and families, not legislators and cops.
What about the proposed recreational use?
Well, I think it may be premature to approach that because, as you may know, with the federal government still having marijuana use criminalized, yes. I think that creates too many issues. I think the nation is moving in that direction, but again, I would have to see the particulars of the bill, but I just think that would create a lot of issues and problems. We do have Colorado, Washington that has approved that, and that's something that we should watch and be in a position to intelligently debate when that issue comes up.
One of the first bills that was passed in the last session was the bill allowing Gogebic Taconite to apply for an iron permit for an iron ore mine in Ashland and Iron counties. Do you think that bill should be amended in any way?
Well, again, I haven't studied the specifics, but given that it was passed, I guess, so quickly, and again, going back to my concerns of James Madison, our founding fathers, when you have one-party control over the issue, I wonder if things have been looked at properly. Streamlining for certain things may be a good thing, but you don't streamline if there's health, safety concerns. So streamlining in that context is not good.
Okay. You think first offense drunken driving should be a crime? Yeah.
No. Perhaps at high levels it'd be something I'd consider, but I agree with Susan Happ's position, who is a veteran prosecutor. that the deterrent effect she doesn't think is there, and the cost to the taxpayers would be too high.
Finally, I want to give you a chance to highlight differences between you and your opponent on November 4, State Representative Stephen Nass.
Well, I think differences I think I'm more optimistic. I think he comes from a negative approach. Obviously, doing some little research on my opponent, if you Google, you see that he has an adversarial relationship with the University of Wisconsin system. You can have differences, but to have your relationship characterized as adversarial is not good. Another difference, he's been in the legislature 24 years on a partisan basis. I've served on the county board in Walworth County and on the town board of Darien. We don't get into party issues. So if there's an issue that comes in front of us, we don't go in separate rooms, caucus, talk, and come out and take positions. We look at what is the problem, what's the possible solutions, what's our range of options, what are our resources. We then talk to each other, listen to each other, and solve the problem. And that's the approach I would like to take to Madison. If people are satisfied with the way Mr. Nass has conducted himself the last 24 years, then they should vote for him. If they'd like a new approach, then I think they should vote for me.
Thank you. Dan Kilkenny of Delavan is a Democrat running in the 11th State Senate District. Dan, thanks for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.